And on top of that, we have high-rise, high-density housing, which a lot of people object or will say that it will fail, it cannot work. Everybody wants a bungalow house and a garden. It cannot be. Okay, what are the success factors that we are able to put in place to achieve all those what you have seen earlier part? First is the government support in two forms. I will just briefly run through the basics. Government grants. We have a government grant. To ensure affordability, public housing is always a question of affordability. Public housing flats are heavily subsidized. Yesterday, we talked about the last 2 days. Affordability subsidy. The resulting deficit, because when subsidized, the resulting deficit is then reimbursed by the government annually in the form of a housing grant in the government budget. So annually, the government budget was set aside. We can calculate how many units you're going to build, you're going to sell, so how many units you're going to subsidize. This is allowed by government to give to HDB. Yeah? Then we have next the housing development bond loan. In order to build all those flats, you need to pay the salary of the staff, the professional, which HDB actually is a government-led public housing situation. We have a whole department HDB full of professional administrators and all the whole works to build all those. Yeah? So you need money and to pay the contractors for building it also. So HDB receives two types of loan as a form of loan from the government, namely the mortgage financing loan for HDB to provide mortgage loan. So we not only build, we provide loans, service like banking service to flat buyers and the housing and development loan to pay for the cost of development and operation. The cost of development and operation. Pay contractor and pay our own staff. Next is the legislative support, which is equally important. We have the Land Acquisition Act. Singapore's Land Acquisition Act was a key player in ensuring success in the early stages of public housing program. It allowed HDB to compulsorily acquire private land. Compulsorily acquire private land. You are in a less fortunate position. You couldn't do that. Or if you do that, it's very costly, I presume, lack of budget and things like that, which we have heard. But we have fortunate enough for public housing and other development. As long as it's for public interest, we can acquire the land. This act allows, and this act together, again, with the sensitive resettlement policy, you also have to, how to resettle public, from the land, to enable HDB to clear the squatters and slums for development. Next is the housing scheme, home ownership premium. CPF housing grant scheme. We have a compulsory saving, The home ownership for the people scheme was introduced in 1964. Prior to that, public housing was mainly catered to the lower income group on a rental basis. So before 1960s, we only basically built rental units for the very poor, or at that stage considered poor. The rationale behind the introduction of this scheme, or this home ownership, was based on the belief that every citizen deserves to have a stake in the assets of the country. When you own it, you defend it and you take care of it. Rental housing, you rent, they couldn't be bothered. That's the usual case, unless it's properly organized, community-wise organized. It can work also. It's not that it can work. The home ownership offers financial assistance in the form of low-interest mortgage loans and an extended repayment scheme, longer period of repayment. Purchasers were allowed to use their savings in the Central Provident Fund, Social Security contribution. Every month, every employee, every Singaporean who works had to contribute part of his salary into the fund. The employer also contribute part, percentage of fund. This becomes your saving. And you can use this saving as a down payment for when you apply for a flat, and also repayment over the months as you go along. For most Singaporeans today, the desire to own a home is a strong one, as it means financial security and stability. So it is a good thing politically to go into home ownership and continue with rental housing. That's from our experience. But every country still nevertheless needs a certain percentage of rental housing, because in every country there will be bound to have a certain percentage of very, very poor people which need help from the government. On a macro level, to have a large percentage of population possessing their own homes contributes to the overall political, economic, and social stability of the country. This is very important. Today, 90% of public housing are owned by our residents. So 90%. Only 10% are rentals. Okay, the next is comprehensive new town planning. I'm sure this topic will be touched by Jeffrey. He's a planner, architect planner in Savannah. He's done a lot of planning all over the world. Okay. All I want to say is HDB has always pursued the sound policy of planning and building a new town with a comprehensive town structure. We build in totality, literally. The underlying planning principle was the concept of self-sufficiency. As a result, towns were developed with a wide range of facilities and amenities. We not only built the housing, we built the facilities and amenities, including social and recreational facilities that took care of the needs of the residents without having them to travel long distances. That means the whole new town is self-sufficient. We have light industries within our new town. And as Jeffrey said yesterday, I think on the first day, we even integrate private condominium into our new town. In fact, they welcome it because they sort of enjoy the benefits and the advantage of new town development when their sites is at the fringe of our new town. As you think for your case, private development, they don't like the rental housing because it becomes a systemized. They sort of downgrade their surrounding. All these facilities allow for social interaction among the residents, which in turn promote community ties. This is in line with the mission of helping building communities. So we are not just building public housing, we are building homes and communities. Okay. Then we also have this is my paper but not here, rejuvenation of existing town. Of course, like any country, anywhere and elsewhere, we go back to the old known town to rejuvenate. We knock down some very inefficient blocks or some parcels of land that is not efficiently built up in terms of maximization and usage, and reintroduce the newer flats and facilities even sometimes with clear land for facilities, which is required, which earlier reflect in the slide. The next one is the meticulous resource planning and management under a single agency. We are fortunate in the sense that HDB is the sole agency that takes care of public housing development in Singapore. When I say sole agency, I mean in every aspect of the word, because I, as a chief architect, have to draw up the building program for the whole of Singapore. Yearly program, 5-yearly program, 20-year program, even we have that. And I will call a 6-monthly meeting with all the agencies in the country that provide the infrastructure and supplement my new town development. I will tell them what is my building program, how many units I'm going to build this year, and where are they. And they have to gear up their own budget and resources to build in tandem with what I needed. So that's an advantage for me. And we are given the sort of written rule that everybody must cooperate with HDB. There's no such thing as saying, oh sorry, I cannot provide you this because I don't have the budget for this year. And my priority is not this area, my priority is the other area. No, which many countries face, as far as I know. They could not get the act together because no single agency is able to command it. But fortunately, in Singapore, we do have the situation where I can command it under HDB, So it's very important that you must under a single agency. But it does not mean that without a single agency it cannot work. It just means that it works better for us. And proven our case. Then the other thing is meticulous resource planning. HDB at one time have stockpiling of sand, we have granite quarries, we even own a brick kiln, we manufacture our own bricks. We have granite quarries, we ensure these are all the basic materials that required to build our flats. And we have long-term contract with cement supplier, long-term contract with steel supplier. These are the basic essentials to build your flats. Why? We have to ensure there's a continuous supply. We are not held ransom by private sector. 2, control of price. When you know that you have the continuous supply of the material, there's a certain price that you will find its own level. You are not subject to fluctuation. So we are lucky in the sense that when we have this, you also able to budget the budget quite accurately and set aside the money for it. Okay? And management again, yesterday we touched on management. HDB at one time had managed, we not only built and owned, we managed the whole thing, everything. But of course, as the years progress, as we listened yesterday, we progressed into town council now. Okay. Good estimation together, and then we have town council estimation here. And then town council is a political move, more or less. We got a member of parliament to be head of this town council. But again, we are involving the community. The town council committee forms the MP as a chairman, and he draws his grassroots leaders from the residents, plus people from outside his committee to help him, assist him in the day-to-day running of the new town, and also more important, the member of parliament can get feedback. Okay. In conclusion, in closing, all right, the Singapore government is committed to make public housing affordable to the people of Singapore. There are constant studies. This is the part, right? Constant studies to innovate and provide the best possible living environment for the people to meet their rising expectations and aspirations. There is constantly re-examining of approaches and strategies to find more creative and cost-effective ways to design new urban and housing forms in the relentless pursuit of building homes for Singaporeans. A place to grow up and a total living environment. So we don't just build housing, we build the whole thing holistically. We look at it holistically and manage it holistically. I'll end up with my own quote when I was the chief architect of the department. We have a dream and dare to dream. And it is with this dream that we have a vision. And with that vision, we rise to the challenge to scale new heights in the pursuit of this dream. Thank you very much.
Mr. Okay, I promise it won't take any longer than all the other previous. I know how you feel, especially just before lunch. Yeah, I'm Jeffrey Ho. I'm from Savannah. I'm in charge of the Savannah Urban Planning Group. The previous slides shown by Tony, I am very happy that I've shown it because those are work done by my company, Savannah. And it is a very good opportunity to market some of my work. Okay, what I do this morning is this. I would not talk about architecture, although I'm an architect by heart, but I will touch on points more relevant to the workshop. So I may just move a little bit into policies and a little bit into things related to affordability. I was here in August, and when I was here in August, I do not know whether some of you were here before. I told the audience that I'm very fortunate to be a Singaporean. Why? Because my housing need is taken care of by the government. And I don't have to worry about my housing anymore. I concentrate on my work. I concentrate to spend time with my family. Today, in October, I'm here again, same workshop. I still say the same thing. I'm still very fortunate to be a Singaporean. But today, I feel I have a greater sense of security because in our last election, this is our Prime Minister. He promised housing still remain a top priority in their political agenda. And that makes it such that the government will continue to protect the value of the homes of all Singaporeans. But I feel this is not something special or unique to Singaporeans. I think all citizens of the world should be as fortunate as Singaporeans to have good housing. And this can only happen if the government of the country takes responsibility that public housing is something that they have to address as a priority in the agenda. In Singapore, we have built 1 million homes. And of this 1 million homes, we provided shelter for about 82% of our population. And out of this 1 million homes, 90% are owned by Singaporeans. Only 10% are rental. The success story of Singapore housing is well known, but there are also many failures of public housing all over the world. We hear more of failures than success in public housing. Because in my work, I have done projects in many emerging countries or developing countries, and always I find that the issue of housing is always on the table for discussion, and the master plan that I have developed for that usually have to put housing as a priority. So what's the success story for Singapore? I think you all know by now. It is the drive for home ownership. Now the drive for home ownership did not happen just yesterday. It took us 50 years to build up where we are today in our public housing. It started off in 1960s. Our first project whereby people were allocated homes and they become homeowners. And every year since the 60s until present day, each stage of the journey of this home ownership, there are always some very special strategy developed for each stage. And each of this strategy has only one main objective, and that is each stage must always elevate the standard of public housing to a higher level. There's no turning back. There's only one way to move, and that is forward for public housing. So every stage of this journey, we started off by solving shortages. Then we start to deregulate some of the policies and facilitate demand. Then we have affordability, and then presently we are only looking for quality homes. All this are passing for us. We are no longer looking for solutions to our housing problem. We are actually looking for new designs in our housing. So we have moved on. So now with home ownership, we know how many to build, where to build, when to build, and for whom to build. Now this sounds so easy, you know. I mean, but it is a plan. Because without this plan of how many, where, and when, and whom, it is very difficult to implement a housing program. Back in the colonial days when Singapore was under the British, they also built public housing, but they built it more for rental. And the properties were not well maintained. The people have got no sense of belonging. There's no sense of permanency, no sense of ownership. And to many people, it was just incurring short-term housing. They don't feel that they own the homes. So rental housing during that period was only short-term. There was no long-term solution. Now, what is the secret formula for the Housing and Development Board of Singapore to be able to be a very successful housing developer in Singapore, the largest housing developer in Singapore? It's merely just district homes. Be trustworthy that when you build quality homes. And when you have built the quality homes and you hand it over to the homeowners to maintain it. So just these 3 points alone makes a good developer. Now I want to, Tony, the previous speaker, has listed down many success factors. But I want to pick only 3 success factors that, in my opinion, applies very well to the context of Taiwan at the moment. I chose these 3 for us. Planning for the future, implementing comprehensive new towns, ensuring choice, affordability, and value of homes. Let me touch on the first thrust, long-term planning. Long-term planning for housing in Singapore is not an option. We have to do it. Because our island is so small, just look at this island. It only takes you by an hour to travel from the airport, which is located on the east, to the west. And we only have a total land area of 710 square kilometers. And our present population is 5.4 million. we have to plan for the future because our population is increasing. Our population is not only increasing, but our land is getting scarce. So how do you match the two? Me, as an urban planner, the solution is very obvious. Plan long term. If you plan long term, you are able to identify the kind of land allocation for all your major land users, like commercial, residential, industry, airport, military grounds, and landscape areas, many things. So if you do long term, you are able to identify where are your land for your future housing. Now to do this long-term planning in Singapore, we started off in 1971, developing the first concept plan. At that time, our concept plan only need to accommodate 3.4 million population. Then our concept plan is reviewed every 10 years. 1991, 2001, 2001, 2011. Each concept plan is reviewed and amended to accommodate the growing population. And out of each master plan, out of each concept plan, it evolved a master plan. These are the master plan. These are actually very detailed plans showing precisely where all the future land for commercial, residential, industry, and everything that the country needs to support the economy and the growing population. And when we have got all this land allocation for future needs, we actually put it back into this plan, and it shows very clearly where the future land will be, even though we don't develop them now, but we safeguard the lands. The kind of planning that I just shown you, the long-term planning, the master plan and the concept plan, is actually undertaken by the Ministry of National Development, led by the Urban Redevelopment Authority. But doesn't mean the Urban Redevelopment Authority does the whole long-term plan. They actually work with all the ministries of the country. They sit together, they discuss what are the future needs of the country. They determine what kind of land they need for the country. They determine the kind of land that will support the projected population, which is always on the increase. It may be a slow increase, but it's always increasing. They exchange views, they listen to each other, they have trade-off, they give and take. Nobody has any self-interest in the ministry. They all work very closely together. And this is necessary for long-term plan. You cannot plan in isolation like any single ministry. All ministries have to work together. Now, when the ministry work together, fundamentally they are looking at how to forecast the growth, how to forecast the population. Because you cannot immediately determine the kind of land area you need unless you know what kind of population you can support. To determine the kind of population, again the formula, I have to simplify it. It could be a little bit more complicated than this. In very simple flowchart, it started off by just identifying the kind of future population that requires housing and those that do not require housing. And then from those that require housing, there are only two types of housing, private and public housing. And then from the public housing, it goes down into rental and home ownership flats. And then that's where you determine the land requirements. And from the private housing, you determine the land requirements also. Then the subtotal here, the grand total here, the total land required for the next 10 years. Stop. It does not stop here. In fact, this is the beginning. You need more efforts now to to find the location precisely on the island Singapore where all this land allocation can be placed. Then you will look into where are the employment centers, transportation, and then most importantly, the infrastructure.